So here we have Joe Biden once again lying about Medicare for all and how much it would actually cost. So let's take a look and then we will
Plan will
discuss.
get prescription drug prices under. Yeah, it costs a lot of money. It's $750 billion over 10 years. We can do it without raising taxes on the middle class, just making sure everybody pays the capital gains rate, whatever their tax rate is. That will raise $800 billion. And I can get that passed through the United States Congress. And I can get it done right away. As my mother would say, God love Bernie Sanders and others proposing Medicare for all. It's going to cost over $30 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah, well, what you're not pointing out there, Joe, is that it actually would save people a substantial amount of money if we had a Medicare for all universal healthcare system in the United States. We're basically the only developed so-called industrialized country in the world that doesn't have universal healthcare. And what do you know? We pay more than any other country. So no, Joe, that is just a ridiculous line of argument. Medicare for all, universal healthcare, having a single payer would reduce costs substantially. You idiot.
And he hadn't been able to move the ball a single inch. The only place that went past was your neighboring state of Vermont.
Joe, if politicians actually listened to what the voters wanted, a majority of Americans support Medicare for all or universal health care, especially among Democratic voters. It's usually 70 or 80% of Democratic voters support Medicare for all. So if politicians are actually doing the will of the people with regards to healthcare, then we would have had universal healthcare a long time ago.
And they had to double their tax rate, increase their withholding tax by 14%, and
the whole thing about taxes going up needs to be pointed out. Healthcare would be free at the point of service, no co-pays, premiums, deductibles, none of that stupid shit. So we'd be eliminating that private tax, and you would be saving a lot more money by instituting a Medicare for all system. And again, the people that are saying, it's going to cost all this money aren't taken into account or don't like to highlight that the U.S. already spends more than every other country on healthcare. Yet we don't cover everybody, but these other countries that do spend much less. So what is that? What's the difference? Because we have a for-profit healthcare system that puts these health insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry puts their profits above people's health and wellness, as well as just the huge amount of bureaucracy and administration costs that are part of that. All of those things would obviously go away under a Medicare for all system, and that's one of the ways that it saves money is you're getting rid of these huge health insurance company executives and their bonus pays, as well as just all the administration fees of these different healthcare plans. Now you have to call and see, oh, do I qualify for this? Do I qualify for that? Well, let me go see and check. Medicare for all, everything's free at the point of service. It makes sense. It saves money. People aren't going to be dying or going bankrupt because they don't have health care.
Finally got rid of it. Plus, Bernie refused to say how much it will cost. Who's going to pay for it? His answer is, and I quote, nobody knows. I promise you, I know.
All you know, Joe, is how to stand for the corporations and health insurance companies because you're not willing to adopt a progressive platform with regards to this. And let's just check this out for a little bit of reference. No, Joe's not, into doing research or really in reality as we know it. He's kind of off in his, neoliberal centrist world where he has the money and resources. If he gets sick or something happens, he could pay for it out of pocket. Most people don't have that luxury, Joe. That's why we need universal health care. That's why you're not going to win. That's why Bernie Sanders is going to win. And one of the reasons is he's been clear for his support for Medicare for all for decades. So look at this. Relative to its size of its wealth, the U.S. spends a disproportionate amount on health care And yet we don't have universal health care like all these other countries that spend much less than we do. What's the difference there? It's because it's our for-profit healthcare system, Joe. God damn, it's just so ridiculous that we're having to have this debate in the United States 2020 of whether it's okay for people to still die and go bankrupt because they don't have health care. And it costs more money to have this a current for-profit healthcare system than it would for a universal healthcare or Medicare for all type system. So look at this. United States, about $10,000 a year on healthcare. Every other country is less by at least 20%. So on average, other wealthy countries spend about half as much per person on health than the US spends. This is from healthsystemtracker.org. You can Google, find out this information for your own. Don't take my word for it, but all of the research shows that countries with universal health care, and again, the United States is like the only developed country in the world that doesn't have that, they spend less on health care than we do, and we have horrible health outcomes because it's a for-profit healthcare system that puts these health insurance company and the pharmaceutical industry's profits above taking care of people. Profit motive does not need to be in the healthcare field at all. It's freaking ridiculous. So check this out. United States, over 10 grand a year, Switzerland at 8, and the next closest country is Germany at 5,000. So look at this. Comparable country average, the United States basically spends double compared to every other country in the world. And what's so special about the United States that we have to have people die and go bankrupt because they can't afford or don't have access to healthcare? What makes it so special that has to happen? It's because the profit motive, and that's the only thing. Look, Canada, our neighbor to the north, spends less than 5,000 a year. United Kingdom, less than 5,000. Netherlands, around 5. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. And again, the politicians that are making these arguments are either completely just ignorant of the facts, not wanting to know the facts, or obviously they're just doing the bidding of the health insurance and pharmaceutical industries that bankroll their campaign. Let's see. And then look, since the 1980s, the gap has widened between U.S. healthcare spending and that of other countries. Health consumption expenditure as percent of GDP. Look, it's going to continue to increase and increase until we implement a Medicare for all single-payer system. And Bernie Sanders is the only candidate that I trust to fight like hell to make sure that's a reality. And the reason I say that is because he's been clear and consistent for that. And the only other candidate at one point was Elizabeth Warren, and she's completely backpedaled and doesn't even really mention that at all anymore. And she's goes to that wishy-washy public option. In the 1970s, the U.S. spent about 6% of its GDP on health, similar to spending by several comparable countries. Let's see, in 2017, the U.S. spent 17% of its GDP on health consumption, where the next highest neighboring country, Switzerland, devoted 12% of its GDP. So again, what's the only difference? It's a for-profit healthcare system. It's more concerned with padding health insurance companies' bottom line than it is making sure people get quality, adequate healthcare that they need to keep them healthy. It's just nuts. So again, most Americans and a vast majority of Democrats want a Medicare for all system. The reason that it hasn't happened, Joe, is because the politicians are doing the will and the bidding of the health insurance lobby and the pharmaceutical lobby. It's the only reason people want it. It makes sense. It saves money. It saves money, Joe, you idiot. And it's just the right thing from an ethical and moral perspective. There's no reason why people in the United States, currently it's like 30 to 45,000 people die each year because they don't have access to health care, as well as 500,000 people going bankrupt each year due to medical bills. Those things completely go away, and a Medicare for all single payer system. It makes sense on every level, and again, Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who's going to fight to make sure that Medicare for all becomes a reality in the United States. None of the other candidates will. Just another reason to support Bernie. Bernie 2020, not me, us. Peace. Much love.